Welcome everybody to Peninsula Symphony All-Stars at Home. We are taking a look back today at the Concert for Hope that took place in 2007, celebrating the founding of the Stanford University Center for Poverty and Inequality. And we have with us today all of the principals who made that event a landmark. So let me welcome everybody. Lauren Spieth, trustee and founding CEO of Elfenworks Foundation, who was one of the major collaborators on that event. Welcome, Lauren.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I also should say that Lauren is a violinist who has been a member of the Peninsula Symphony for many years. She's on leave right now for various reasons, but very much a part of the Peninsula Symphony family. And Elfenworks has been involved in Peninsula Symphony's Adopt a Musician program as well. Also today, we have with us David Grusky, director of the Center on Poverty and Inequality at Stanford University. Welcome, David.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here.
And we are happy to celebrate the fact that the Stanford Center on Poverty and Inequality is thriving and as much as ever needed. So we'll talk about that in a little while. And also with us today is Giancarlo Aquilanti, the composer of the centerpiece of the musical part of the Concert for Hope. Giancarlo is composer, senior lecturer at Stanford University, a director of the Stanford Wind Symphony, probably lots of other titles. Welcome, Giancarlo. It's lovely to see you.
They're all, I'm happy to be here. All the titles are related to music. And it was my pleasure to write the composition, but I'm sure we're going to talk about that later.
We sure are. Oh, it's a pleasure. And it's really nice to get this team saddled up again after all these years. So I'd like to start by introducing our audience who may not know Giancarlo's music all that well musically. And what we're going to listen to and watch is an excerpt of the double concerto for trumpet, tuba, and wind symphony. You'll see Giancarlo conducting. This was from 2018, isn't that right, Giancarlo?
Correct.
It's a terrific piece, Giancarlo. Now, this is a
Thank you.
piece that you write abstractly. It's not an occasional piece. It's not a piece you wrote for a specific occasion, like the one that we're going to talk about and see later on for the Concert for Hope. So, what is your impulse when you're writing a piece of music that isn't for a specific occasion? What was your impulse in writing that piece?
Well, mainly was the two soloists. So I've written separate concertos for both of them. Many years ago, I believe in 2005, I wrote a tuba concerto specifically for that player, who is an amazing virtuoso player on tuba. He has the technique of a violin player or a flute player.
Yeah, he's really
in
extraordinary in that performance. Fantastic.
It's amazing. He's probably one of the best tuba players in the world. And incidentally, we grew up in the same little town in Italy. It's just a coincidence. He's a few years younger than we grew up in different time, but from the same
was this
town.
was this the town of Jesi and that subject of the piece that you wrote? That we'll talk about that in a minute too.
Yes, exactly. And then in 2014, I believe I wrote a trumpet concerto specifically for this other player who is also another virtuoso player. He was the first trumpet of the Chicago Symphony for a few years, and then before he decided to return to Italy. And then I decided to combine the two of them to write this double concerto and put together these two virtuoso players, which they agree to. It seems easy that they're playing, it seems easy, but it's extremely virtuoso in all the movements, especially the last movement. It's extremely virtuoso. And their respective wives told me that they spent months and months practicing that pieces to the point that they just couldn't take it anymore.
Well, you gave them plenty of technical challenges and musical hurdles to go through in that piece. It's very, very challenging and very exciting. And I see in that piece a lot of the threads that I hear in your music. It's a little jazzy. It's quite contemporary. It's rhythmic and driving in many cases, but it also has a wonderful lyricism in the middle movement. And those are some of the qualities that kind of drew us to you as the composer for La Poverta, the piece that we're going to be talking about. We had a chance to get exposed to your Mass, and I'm going to play a couple of excerpts from the performance of two movements of that Peninsula Symphony did with the Stanford Symphonic Chorus in 2018 in a minute. But tell us just a little, the Mass is a little more like the contextual musical environment that we were looking for La Poverta. So tell us about the Mass and what the impulse for composing that piece was, which is, of course, very different.
Yeah, that piece originally was written for a choir that I used to have in Jesi. I can't remember exactly. I think it was like I wrote that in 1989, and the occasion for writing that piece was the death of a good friend of mine. He just had a car accident. He was not even 30 years old and just had a car accident, and poof, there he goes. So that was the inspiration to write this piece. And back in Jesi, there was no orchestra. We had the possibility were very limited. So I wrote it originally was for piano, two soloists, and percussions. That was it. And then when we perform it with the Peninsula Symphony, I show the score to Steve Sano, our music director, choral director at Stanford. And I show him the score, the piano version, and he said, "Why don't you orchestrate this? And we might be able to do it with I will propose it to Peninsula Symphony." So that's when the orchestra versions came along, and I gave the score to Steve Sano. Steve gave it to you. Apparently, both of you liked the compositions, and off we go from there.
Absolutely. I'm going to play just to give an example of how naturally symphonic this piece is. I'll play a movement from the performance that Peninsula Symphony and Stanford Symphonic Chorus, which I conducted and which Steve Sano is the director of the chorus. This is the Sanctus movement, more in the style of what we just heard, actually. And we have only audio for this, so here goes. That piece is so symphonic in its concept, and really exemplifies the large scale Giancarlo Aquilante identity. But here is another movement that is very different and more like what we were looking for La Poverta. This is a bit of the intermezzo, and it's just one of the most touching contemporary pieces of music I know. It's just powerfully emotional, heartrending, just very, very beautiful writing. And we have loved performing that, Giancarlo, with you, and I've loved conducting it myself. So let's move away now to the other half of this equation, which is the founding of the Stanford Center and the collaboration of Elfenworks and Lauren with David Grusky in that. So bring us up to date a little bit on the founding, the origins of the Stanford Center on Poverty and Inequality. Lauren and David.
After you, David.
Okay, happy to talk a bit about that. And from the get-go, I should say that the support of Lauren and also the work of John Watkins was instrumental in making the Stanford Center what it is today. So, why did we set it up? It was really a simple objective to improve the country's capacity for evidence-based policy. And that objective was to be met in three ways. We wanted to better monitor what's happening in the country. If you don't know what's happening, if you don't know who's suffering and why, you can't develop good policy. So to monitor was objective one. Objective two, to evaluate existing policies with high quality data. We want to know what's working and what's not. And then third, we want to use the results from that monitoring and that evaluation to devise new policies that are based on the evidence. So three objectives, that was kind of our center, our core, our fundament, and it was with the help of Lauren and John that we made all that happen.
So how did you first get connected as CEO of Elfenworks with this, Lauren?
Well, we were looking for a partner to work with, who might want some help with technology, with developing their website, and who we really felt was committed to making a difference for the better for our country. And David just fit the bill. His center, he had great hopes for it, which I feel like so proud to have watched the center grow over the last 14 years. It was a joy working with him, working with John Watkins and him developing this database for all the central repository. They were having, my uncle, who is a filmmaker, lent some historic footage of the social justice movement in the 60s, which is, we highlighted on the original website there. And I just felt really strongly as a musician that when we were getting ready to celebrate this opening, this historic opening, we wanted to draw a line in the sand and it's used too much, but have an inflection point, as we may be having right now in our country, of waking up to some issues that need to be addressed and how we can do that in a way that's scientific. I remember getting such wonderful support. Giancarlo, you're my favorite modern composer, and to work with you was a joy. The conversations that we had on the phone before we ever had Zoom, we had conference calls, and we had a call to figure out what it was that you so generously let us put our 2 cents in on what we might set to music, which I loved being a part of that collaboration. I'm sure David did too. Unusual generosity of spirit. And Mitch, I know you volunteered your time and got wonderful musicians to come in and just put your full force behind it. And it really shows. Music is really it can transition people. It can move hearts and minds together. I think we saw a little bit about that in the inauguration this year, all the music that was trying to set a tone of unity and hope. And Elfenworks Foundation is in harmony with hope. So music made a lot of sense to me. And you get by with a little help from your friends. And when you've got friends like you three, how far can you go?
Well, we very much enjoyed participating in that project. And part of the essence of that was the choice of texts. I'm going to read them now. And you'll see that in the performance. But these are texts, and I want to ask Giancarlo how these texts shaped your composition of the piece. It's a while ago, so that they may be digging back into your procedural compositional memory. But here are the texts. The first one is from Mother Teresa. It says, "Serve the poorest of the poor. Do not wait for leaders. Do it now, person to person." That's Mother Teresa. And then a text from Deuteronomy that parallels that. "For the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command thee, saying, Thou shalt open thine hand wide unto thy brother, to thy poor, to thy needy in thy land." And those two texts are the core of this piece. Giancarlo, what are your recollections of looking at those texts and figuring out how to set them?
I mean, I grew up in a family where we were. I wouldn't consider myself poor. In fact, as a kid, I always thought we were rich, and until I realized later on in my life, we grew up with nothing. But as a kid, I always thought that our family was rich, but certainly not with money. It was rich with other values and other things. And so these texts, they've been part of my life for a long time. So quotes from Mother Teresa, and of course quotes from the Bible, being raised in a sort of a religion environment. And this idea of poverty, this idea of helping, this idea of being part of this world in a more productive way, it was always been part of my life. And these two quotes, that's what sparked the idea of having two sopranos and two string quartets. That's these two different quotes. That's what kind of made the orchestration as natural as it is, though, I'm not sure that I could quote any other pieces for two sopranos and two string quartets at the same time.
I don't know of any either. The two sopranos, I think you'll see that in the video we're about to show. But the two sopranos, Shonette Sulker and Rebecca Plack, are just wonderful in this. And the 8 string players are members of Peninsula Symphony and Symphony Silicon Valley people, professional musicians that I've worked with for many, many years. And the organization of the piece is, I think, very successful. The first part is slow and lyrical and kind of impulsive and heartbreaking. And then later on, we go into a series of several kind of jazzy fugues that interweave the texts and interweave the music in a most interesting way. You want to say anything else about the organization of the piece before we play it?
I mean, it's a little bit of the reflection of my musical experience, and being born in Italy, born and raised over there, you can't escape the influence of the opera. So that lyrical aspect that often you find in my music, it comes from that background. But at the same time, I've been living in this country long enough that I've learned so many things here, including a little bit of jazz music. I don't consider myself a jazz musician because it's a different world. But I was always fascinated by this jazz music, I say, that I was not exposed while I grew up in Italy. And so through the years, I learned how to combine, I would say in a unique way, if I may, these two musical experience that I had here in Italy. I have to say that when my music gets performed here in the States, I always get the comments, "Oh, you're so Italian, you're so lyrical, you're blah, 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 blah." And then when my music gets performed in Italy, and they always say, "Oh, yeah, we always hear that American background." And in fact, when I show it to my teacher, he always says, "You've been there too long. It's time for you to come back home."
Well, it all comes together and works beautifully. And I think what we need to do now is to hear the piece. So this is the newly revised version of this, thanks to Elfenworks, of La Poverta. You'll see all the other information in just a moment. Terrific piece, Giancarlo. Congratulations on writing such a powerful, wonderful piece of music.
Thank you. Thanks.
I want to emphasize that this wasn't the only music on that program. that was the centerpiece of the Concert for Hope. Lauren and David, tell us how you chose this other gospel end of the musical world to also focus on the Concert for Hope.
Well, I had Tammy Hall, a very, very dear friend of mine from college, who is she's a wonderful composer in her own right in a different genre. She plays jazz and gospel and all pretty much anything you'd want her to play. And I asked her if she might compose something, and she did. But she also played an old standard, which is "We Shall Not Be Moved." That's what we know it by, but researching it looks like it's called "I Shall Not Be Moved" originally. A real rallying cry towards justice and hope. And so it seemed to me, and I ran it by David, and David thought it was a really good idea. I just want to say, going back to Giancarlo, I remember telling Giancarlo that my favorite older composer was Bach. And I don't know if you heard in the middle there, that fugue in 8 voices. Who does a fugue in 8 voices? I mean, who can do that? It was just wonderful. And you can hear that Bach influence. And I know that was your kindness, Giancarlo. So I love it. But back to Tammy Hall, she was, she's very, very much of like mind to the work that's going on at the Stanford Center. And so she was keen to help out, and she brought in a number of singers as well, plus percussion.
So we're going to conclude with that, but before we do, let me just ask David Grusky and Lauren Spieth what it's been like for you in the last 10 months and your work at Elfenworks and at the center. David.
Well, I'm happy to talk a bit about what we're doing at the center that's specifically focused on the pandemic. We're, for example, using GPS data throughout the country to better understand how racial and economic disparities in infection rates are being generated. With then those results on disparities being used to help devise closing and reopening plans. And the idea is that we ought to care not just about minimizing overall infection rates, of course that's immensely important, but also we have a responsibility to reduce economic and racial disparities, infections and deaths as well. So that's one project that's ongoing. Another is the American Voices Project, which is simply all about listening to what's happening to people throughout the country as they try to fare with the difficulties that's facing many of us. We just ask them what's happening in their lives, the obstacles they're facing, the problems they're facing, how they're experiencing and dealing with the pandemic and other crises. And in that way, we can better inform our country's policy.
And Lauren, tell us about what Elfenworks life has been like as an active organization over the last 10 months, 11 months.
Well, it's been different. I mean, most of everyone is telecommuting. We're still working on a number of different fronts. We are working on preservation, transformation, and innovation. And we have, for example, we're working on getting together an aviary for the Elfenworks aviary webcam for the Lake Tahoe Wildlife Center, and things like that are going on. We're working on cutting edge farm in Jordan, which is one of the driest countries, to see if we can transform the way that food is produced and, maybe save some lives that way, hopefully. So there's a lot going on. One of the things that we're doing tonight during this presentation, anybody who would like to donate to the wonderful Peninsula Symphony will be matching up to $5,000. So please support this wonderful organization. It's difficult to be an orchestra when you can't get together with your audience. And so creative the way, Mitch, that you're bringing together all of these different ideas to keep the audience engaged and to further music in this time when music is so uplifting and important.
And we're So glad to have continuing relationship with Elfenworks Foundation supporting our Adopted Musician program and this evening tonight. So thank you all for that. And it is uplifting to think that all of us had a hand in that Concert for Hope that launched the Stanford Center for Poverty and Inequality. And we'll sign off tonight after thanking all of you with that Tammy Hall version of We Shall Not Be Moved, or I Shall Not Be Moved. You'll hear it in the multiple person way that we shall not be moved as it unfolds in this recording, and we'll sign off with that. Thank you, Giancarlo. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, David, for making this program so interesting and for all that you have been doing and are continuing to do to bring music and the social sciences and activism for a better world all together. That's really what this is all about. So thank you all very much. And now let us enjoy Tammy Hall and We Shall Not Be Moved as we bid you all a very nice evening.
We shall not
Thank you all. Hope to see you in real life in 2021. Thanks for everybody for watching tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Take care.
Want more content like this from Peninsula Symphony? Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the red subscribe button below and tap the alarm bell icon to get notified whenever a new video is uploaded. Thanks for watching.